Hello, my name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. As I always make clear, this show has a single purpose, holding the politically powerful institution of policing accountable. And to do so, we don't just focus on the bad behavior of individual cops. Instead, we examine the system that makes bad policing possible. And to achieve that goal today, we're going to focus on an institution that has a much larger role in enabling police corruption that is often overlooked: the mainstream media. But before I get started, I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct, please email it to us privately at par@therealnews.com, and we might be able to investigate for you. And of course, you can always message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Facebook or Twitter. And please like, share, and comment on our videos. It really does help us. And now we even have a Patreon account called Accountability Reports. So if you have a few dollars to spare, it would really help us keep doing these investigations for you. The type of investigations the mainstream media simply won't do. So check for the link pinned in the comments below. All right, we've got all that out of the way. Let's get down to business. Now, as anyone who watches this show already knows, Stephen and I try to be as methodical as possible when we report a story. That means delving into details by obtaining police reports and reviewing court documents and sharing as much video evidence as we can obtain when we are reporting a story so that you, the viewers, have all the information you need to make up your own minds about the topic or story that we unpack. We also have become the media outlet of last resort for many people who contact our show for help. What I mean is that many times the stories that we report on have been dismissed or even ignored completely by our mainstream media counterparts, despite the fact that many of these tales of law enforcement overreach are often disturbing and very worthy of attention. That's why when a local Toledo, Ohio television station decided to run a brief segment regarding a story we reported on in detail, we couldn't help but notice, not so much because another media organization had decided to delve into an incident we had been covering, but it was the way they covered it we simply could not ignore. In fact, it was for us a blueprint on why the mainstream approach to covering policing is so troublesome. Now, the story they were covering was something we had devoted 2 shows to unpacking. It was this disturbing body camera footage of the brutal arrest of a cab driver outside of a Walmart in Toledo, Ohio. The victim, an Ohio cab driver named Lufti Saalim, reached out to us after local media ignored his request to shed light on his story, which is where we entered the picture. Just to review the facts of the case, Mr. Saalim had parked his cab outside the Walmart so a client could quickly visit the pharmacy. As he explained to us, he was basically an essential worker transporting patients to pick up critical medication. But then, after he exchanged some words with a manager of the store who wanted him to move, a Lucas County sheriff approached. And this is what happened next. Let's watch.
In a no parking zone.
I understand. I just dropped the client here.
Okay. Can you produce your driver's license, sir?
I will, but you need to tell me the reason.
Go ahead and step out of the car.
You need to tell me, officer.
Go ahead and step off the car.
Hold on, officer. Officer, hold on.
Come on.
Don't force me. Don't force me. Hold on. What I did wrong? Don't touch me. Don't touch me, officer.
Get out of the car!
What I did wrong?
Now!
What I did wrong, officer? What I did wrong? This guy, you come and start me.
293, Lucas. Start me at Sylvania Township unit.
Officer,
step out of the car.
Officer, okay, hold on. No, let's talk.
You want to? I'm going to tase you if you don't get out of the car.
What reason? I am getting out.
Out of the car.
No.
Hands up against the...
No, hold on. Officer, hold on. What I do wrong?
Don't come off.
What I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Officer, what I do wrong? Officer, what I do wrong? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Officer, leave me alone. Leave me alone, officer. Call me supervisor for me. Officer, leave me alone. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Get me.
What are you doing to me?
Stop resisting.
I'm not resisting. I'm diabetic.
Stop resisting.
I'm not resisting.
Get on the car.
Which is why when Mr. Saalim sent us the link to this report, we were curious to say the least. A local television station in Toledo had decided to run a short segment on the story, and it is how they covered it and what they left out that we'll be discussing today. To do so, we're going to try out a new segment we're calling the PAR Mainstream Media Breakdown. It's something we'll do when the media coverage of the case involving questionable police conduct provides a stark example of how cops sometimes have journalists on their side. We're doing this not to be overly critical of other journalists, but simply to point out how the mainstream media sometimes fails to accomplish its most basic task: holding power accountable. So, to get started, I'm going to walk you through the video and point out some of those failures as we watch the piece. And to do so, I'm joined by my reporting partner, Stephen Janis. Stephen, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, are you ready to watch this?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, then let's get started.
Office is addressing a video circulating online showing what some are claiming is unreasonable use of force by a deputy. The body cam video shows a Walmart parking lot and a taxi parked in a no parking zone.
Okay, let's stop there, because simply the way they introduced the piece struck me as odd. Now, instead of saying, for example, that a disturbing body camera video of a brutal arrest has come to light, the anchor leads with the nebulous concept of a video circulating online. Really? That's what made this video newsworthy, because it was circulating online? Stephen, what's your take?
Hey, this is a classic tool we all as journalists use, which we frame a story. Hey, it's just a very video circulating online. It's not a case of police brutality or police overreach. It's just circulating. People are watching it, so we're going to watch it too with you. It's a classic case of framing a story so you don't have to report on the facts.
Now, the second odd part of this report is him saying some people are saying the arrest was overkill. But on the other hand, there was a clear victim. That would be Mr. Saalim. Wouldn't it have been better to reach out to him directly? I mean, Stephen, reaching out to the victim to get their side of the story is pretty important, right?
Absolutely on that one. I mean, some people are saying it's just lazy. I mean, I can use that, but what's your source? Who is saying this? And I think it's important to identify those sources, because those sources also have a dog in the game. So really, you should say this person said, or according to police, or according to the victim. And then again, reaching out to the victim would give them a fuller sort of characterization of the story. So yes, that is very lazy and really not necessary.
Okay, let's watch a little bit more.
When the driver of that taxi is asked to step out of his car, he asks what he's done wrong. The officer then pulls him out while pointing a taser at him, as you can see here. While trying to handcuff him, the driver keeps asking what he did wrong, and the deputy answers with an order to stop resisting, and then tases him. As he's being tased, the driver yells he's diabetic. Sylvania Township Police showed up as backup and say the incident happened a year ago, back in April of 2020.
Now, I'm also struck by how little of the video they use, particularly the parts where the officer seems to escalate the encounter. Why not just show the video and let the people decide instead of this compressed narrative? Stephen, is this just the mainstream media being lazy?
Taya, breaking news, but you're a visual medium. You're presenting things in video, so you're actually using video. So why not show the video? I mean, I don't really understand that. Now, one can make the argument they're constrained by time, and I worked at a television station, and that was always the excuse. But in this case, you have the video that shows and tells the entire story. I mean, create a segment where you can give it the proper airing that it needs. So really, it's video, use the video.
But still, as I'm watching, I can't help but think a brief clip of critical moment, like when the officer forces Mr. Saalim into the car. Let's watch.
Because the guy is coming attacking me. What do you want to bother me? I'm here doing my job. I'm here doing my job. What are you doing? Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Officer, leave me alone. Leave me alone, officer. Call me supervisor. Officer, leave me alone. What are you doing? What are you doing?
And then the anchor says this.
Sylvania Township Police showed up as backup and say the incident happened a year ago, back in April of 2020. And none of their officers were involved. Lucas County Sheriff Mike Navarre tweeted out a statement saying, quote, "The incident was fully investigated and the deputy involved was disciplined. We reached out to the sheriff's office for more clarification, but they have not yet responded."
So here we have the mainstream media outlets saying they could not get comment from a sheriff. But you, based here in Baltimore, did get a comment from the sheriff's office, right?
Yeah, all I had to do was send an email to the PIO of the sheriff's department, who was nice enough to respond to me. So it's really crazy to say you're actually in that community and you can't reach out to police for, and quote unquote, clarification. What's there to clarify? Ask them to support or to give you a reason why they allow this brutal arrest to occur and what sort of implications there have been for the officer. Don't just say you ask for a clarification. The language itself sounds sloppy.
It's hard to understand how you run a piece like this without getting a comment from the sheriff's department. And there is a benefit to that process because, Stephen, you recently confirmed a critical fact about the sheriff who we see on the body cameras.
Well, yeah, after I had asked for the police report, after I reviewed it and I saw the sheriff saying he was working on a special program, I asked another question to the PIO and said, was he working for Walmart? In other words, was he moonlighting on the Walmart payroll? And they actually confirmed that. And that is critical, right? Because if this guy's getting paid by Walmart, obviously he's going to be aggressive if the guy's paying his salary and saying, go get this guy. So it really reveals a lot. And I think it's worth taking the time to get the documents and review them. And this case proves that.
But I think what strikes me the most is just how the station glossed over the experience of the victim, Mr. Saalim. In fact, I'm going to correct that oversight again on our show, even though we've already aired his interview. Why? Because I think it's so important to hear from the people who experience this kind of police-induced trauma. So let's listen to a few clips of Mr. Saalim describe his experience.
They make the whole place a scene like I'm a criminal. They were like I don't know, maybe more than 5 police cars was there. There was city police, city of Sylvania police there. There were fire trucks there. There were this was a Lucas County sheriff who was doing this. The problem is not just the police. The problem is the criminal justice system. The criminal system is not right. I mean, if you poor, you cannot defend, you get a public defender, he will go over, he will take a plea deal. I mean, you don't get the enough, but enough, you cannot afford to defend yourself legally because, this, you may have a 30 case for today that he want to go over all them quickly and then take a plea deal. They were trying to put you 5 years, just took 2 years. He didn't do no investigation, nothing. So the criminal system is really the problem because that's why the police are getting away with what they're getting away with.
So now let's tally up our mainstream media breakdown. Was the story correctly framed so that the facts match the context of what actually happened? Well, when you lead a report off with the idea that the story is news simply because it's circulating online, I would say an emphatic no. I mean, try doing a little reporting and examining the facts before you conclude it's worth airing simply because a couple people shared the video. And was the video that was shared raw body camera footage, or was it our report on the footage? It's simply a good practice to cite your sources. So, did they speak to all interested parties to obtain a balanced perspective? Well, clearly, again, no. Reporting about a video without reaching out to the victim is simply inexcusable. I understand, as Stephen mentioned, that the mainstream media is time constrained, but seriously, you couldn't make an effort to speak to Mr. Saalim? It's one thing for a YouTube channel to post a video without speaking to critical parties, but the mainstream media often touts itself as different from online outfits. So how can you make that argument when you don't follow the basic principles you espouse? Lastly, did our mainstream media counterparts do the work to obtain as much factual data and background information as possible? Well, clearly not. As Stephen just reported, the sheriff was actually on the Walmart payroll at the time of the arrest. In other words, he was able to use his full police powers at the behest of a private employer. That's kind of scary when you think about it, that Walmart can pay cops to arrest people. But a pretty important fact their report admitted that might go a long way to explain the behavior of the officer. So, where does that leave us on our mainstream media background? Well, let's review. Was the story correctly framed? No. Did they speak to all interested parties? No. And did they work to obtain the necessary background information to fully inform the public? That's a big no. So what's the final analysis? This is a big-time mainstream media failure. The bottom line, there are some fundamental breakdowns in journalism here that are not subtle and do warrant attention. I mean, if you're going to run a video of an arrest and you reach out to the police department, shouldn't you also reach out to the man who was subject to the officer's actions to get both sides of the story? And if you have the video, shouldn't you show as much as possible so that your viewers can make up their own minds? Now, I understand mainstream media executives like to bemoan the attention spans of American audiences, but I wonder if it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. Maybe the product you're putting out isn't worth the attention of the people you're trying to reach. I mean, after all, we put out a 20-minute show every week on a single case, and our videos have garnered millions of views. So maybe people just want more substance and depth and less of the superficial coverage you offered of this very consequential arrest. But maybe this also points out what happens when capitalism and advertising collide with the institution of journalism itself. Maybe, as we see here, the market is not always the solution to every problem. I mean, here at The Real News, we don't take corporate advertising, and maybe that's why we have a show that doesn't have to conform to the artificial constraints of advertiser-driven news. I mean, if, as we've argued before on this show, if bad policing plays a critical role in maintaining this country's massive and unequal system of haves and have-nots, then it's true. And it's no surprise that journalism funded by major corporations would do spotty work on holding police accountable. Let's be honest. Are we really surprised that the media funded by a system that feeds on inequity has adopted its pathos? Well, at least here on the PAR, we are lucky enough to not have to work within those constraints, mostly because of viewers like you who support our work. Hopefully, this episode will provide some evidence of why nonprofit journalism is worth the price. I want to thank intrepid reporter Stephen Janis for his writing, reporting, and editing on this piece. And of course, friend of the show, Noli D, for her support. Thanks, Noli D. And I also want to thank Mike Willis, a viewer who analyzed the body camera footage and pointed out a few things that we actually missed. So thank you, Michael Willis. And I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate for you. Please reach out to us. You can email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com and share your evidence of police misconduct. You can also message us at Police Accountability Report on Facebook or Instagram, or at Eyes on Police on Twitter. And of course, you can always message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter and Facebook. And please like and comment. I do read your comments and appreciate them, and I try to answer your questions whenever I can. My name is Taya Graham, and I am your host of the Police Accountability Report. Please, be safe out there.